The alarm bells rang through the Coalition Deep Space Station like thunder. Commander Vextar's 4 eyes blinked rapidly as he stared at his monitor screen. The numbers made no sense. The readings had to be wrong. "Run the scan again," he ordered. His crew. His voice carried the authority of someone who had spent 40 years watching the empty darkness of space. The young Altarian technician at the sensor station shook her head. Her blue skin had turned pale with confusion. "Sir, I have—" "Run it 6 times. The signal is real. It is coming from the dark sector." Vextar walked over to look at the screen himself. The dark sector was a place no one went. It was the edge of known space, where stars died and nothing lived. No ship had ever returned from there. No signal had ever come from there. Until now. "What kind of signal?" he asked. "It appears to be a distress beacon, sir, but the encryption is old. Very old. Our computers say it uses protocols from before the Coalition was formed. That was impossible. The Coalition had existed for 20,000 years. Before that, most species had barely discovered fire. Only the Centauri had been traveling between stars, and their records went back 30,000 years. This signal claimed to be older than civilization itself. "Send the data to Coalition Command," Vextar ordered. "Let them figure out what this means." 3 days later, Admiral HFY of the Centauri Defense Fleet received the report on his flagship. He was a tall, elegant being with silver skin and eyes like stars. He had seen many strange things in his long life, but this report made him laugh. "Impossible," he said to his aide. "Deep space sensors malfunction all the time. This is clearly some kind of equipment failure." But his aide was persistent. "Sir, 3 different stations have now picked up the same signal, and the computers have identified something else. The encryption matches theoretical models of something called the Exodus Protocol." Admiral HFY stopped laughing. The Exodus Protocol was a legend even among humans. Most species knew little about human mythology, but military officers studied the legends of all Coalition races. Humans told stories of a great fleet that had left their homeworld long ago, before they had even developed proper space travel. It was considered a fairy tale. "Bring me Dr. Elena Vasquez," he ordered. "If anyone can make sense of human legends, it would be her." Dr. Elena Vasquez was one of only 12 humans to hold a senior position in the Coalition. She was a small woman with dark hair and intelligent brown eyes. Her specialty was xenoarchaeology, the study of ancient alien civilizations. She had spent her life digging through the ruins of dead worlds, trying to understand how civilizations rose and fell. When she arrived on Admiral HFY's ship, she looked tired. She had been working on a dig on Kepler 442b when the urgent summons came, but when she saw the signal data, her tiredness vanished. "Where did this come from?" she asked. "The dark sector. Grid reference 847229 Alpha. Our deep space stations have been picking it up for 5 days now." Elena stared at the screen. The encryption patterns looked familiar, but they were wrong. They were too old, too complex. According to her knowledge of human history, her people had only been in space for 3,000 years. They were one of the youngest species in the Coalition. Yet this signal suggested human technology that was far older than that. "I need to see the complete signal," she said. "Not just the encryption. I need to see the message itself." Admiral HFY nodded to his aide, who brought up the full transmission. Elena watched as symbols appeared on the screen. They were human symbols, but written in an old style she had seen only in ancient texts. As she read, her face grew pale. "What does it say?" the Admiral asked. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "It says, 'This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Prometheus Rising. We are the last. The enemy has found us. We are coming home. Prepare for what follows.'" The bridge fell silent. Every officer stared at Elena, waiting for an explanation. "United Earthship?" Admiral HFY asked. Earth hasn't used that designation for over 2,000 years, and I have never heard of the Prometheus Rising, Elena was thinking rapidly. Her mind raced through everything she knew about human history. The official record said that humans had developed faster than light travel only 3,000 years ago. Before that, they had been trapped on their single world, slowly developing technology. But there had always been gaps in the historical record, periods where information was missing or unclear. "Admiral," she said slowly, "what if our history is wrong? What if humans have been in space much longer than we thought?" "That is impossible. The Coalition has detailed records of first contact with every species. Humans joined us 3,000 years ago as a newly spacefaring race. But what if they joined us again? What if the humans who joined the Coalition 3,000 years ago were not the first humans to travel the stars?" Admiral Zexhi's star-like eyes widened. "You are suggesting that there was an earlier human civilization? One that left no trace?" "I am suggesting that maybe they did leave traces. Maybe we just never looked in the right place." Elena pointed at the screen showing the signal's origin. "The dark sector. What if they went there? What if something happened that made them leave, and now they are trying to come back?" The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. The idea challenged everything the Coalition thought it knew about the galaxy's history. If humans had been spacefaring, for longer than anyone realized, it would mean rewriting all the history books. It would mean that humanity was not a young species learning from their elders, but possibly one of the oldest spacefaring races in the galaxy. "Even if this is true," he said finally, "my orders are clear. The dark sector is forbidden. No ship enters that region of space. The hazards are too great." Elena looked at him with determination in her eyes. "Admiral, if there are humans out there, humans who have been lost for thousands of years, do we not have a duty to help them? The signal says they are the last. If we do nothing, they might die. And if we send ships into the dark sector, those crews will certainly die. I will not risk Coalition lives on what might be an elaborate hoax or a trap." "Then do not risk Coalition lives," Elena said. "Risk only mine. Give me a small ship and a skeleton crew of volunteers. Let me investigate this signal." Admiral Zexhi studied her face. Elena Vasquez had a reputation for being brilliant but also reckless. She had discovered 3 lost civilizations by going places other archaeologists thought were too dangerous. But the dark sector was different. It was not just dangerous. It was considered impossible to survive. "Dr. Vasquez, even if I wanted to approve such a mission, Coalition Command would never allow it." Elena smiled. It was not a happy smile. "Admiral, with respect, Coalition Command does not need to know about every scientific survey mission, especially one conducted by a human scientist investigating what might be human artifacts." The Admiral realized what she was suggesting. An unofficial mission, a black operation that could be denied if it went wrong. It was against regulations, but it was also the kind of creative thinking that had made the Coalition successful. "If you do this," he said quietly, "and something goes wrong, I cannot help you. You will be on your own." "I understand, sir. But if I am right, if there really are humans out there who have been lost for thousands of years, then finding them could change everything we know about the galaxy." Admiral Zexhi nodded slowly. "Very well, Dr. Vasquez. But you go in a fast scout ship, and you take only volunteers who understand the risks." Elena smiled, and this time it was genuine. "Thank you, Admiral. I will not forget this." As she left the bridge to prepare for her mission, Elena felt a strange mixture of excitement and fear. She was about to venture into the most dangerous region of known space, chasing signals that might be from humans who had been lost longer than recorded history. But something deep inside her, some instinct she could not explain, told her that this was the most important thing she would ever do. In the dark sector, something ancient was stirring, and it was coming home. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the scout ship Seeker as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Around her, the small crew of volunteers checked their instruments. They had been traveling for 6 days, moving deeper into the dark sector than any coalition ship had ever gone. "Sensors are picking up massive gravitational anomalies," reported Lieutenant Kexdal, a young Coraxian who had volunteered for the mission despite his commander's strong objections. "Whatever is out there, it is big." Elena looked at the view screen. Space looked empty, but she knew appearances could be deceiving. "Can you locate the source of the signal?" "Yes, Doctor. Bearing 047, Mark 12, distance." "This cannot be right. What is it?" "The object is over 50 kilometers long. That would make it larger than any ship in the Coalition fleet." Elena felt her heart race. Coalition dreadnoughts were typically 8 kilometers long. Even the massive Centauri world ships were only 20 kilometers. Something 50 kilometers long was beyond anything known technology could build. "Take us closer, but keep our distance. I want to see what we are dealing with." As the Seeker moved forward, the view screen began to show something impossible. It started as a dot, then grew into a shape that defied understanding. It was a ship, but calling it a ship was like calling a mountain a hill. It was enormous beyond comprehension, its hull scarred and blackened by what looked like thousands of years of damage. Scanning the hull, Lieutenant Kexdal reported, "The materials are... I've never seen anything like this. The metal appears to be some kind of advanced composite that our computers cannot identify." Dr. Vasquez studied the massive vessel. Its design was clearly human. She could see the angular lines and practical engineering that marked human spacecraft. But the technology was impossible. Humans had only been building large ships for a few hundred years. This vessel looked like it had been built by a civilization with thousands of years of spacefaring experience. "I am detecting life signs," reported Dr. Jan Ice, a Altarian medical officer who served as the ship's science specialist. "Very faint, but definitely present. Someone is alive over there. Can we establish communication? I am trying standard coalition frequencies. Wait, I am getting a response." The view screen flickered and then showed the interior of what looked like a ship's bridge, but it was unlike any bridge Elena had ever seen. The technology was smooth and advanced, with displays that seemed to float in the air. And sitting in the captain's chair was a human woman. She was tall and athletic, with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. She wore a uniform that Elena did not recognize. Black, with silver trim and insignia that looked military, but followed no current Earth design. The woman looked tired, as if she had been asleep for a very long time. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Prometheus Rising," the woman said. Her voice was clear but carried a strange accent that Elena could not place. "Who are you? And how did you find us?" Elena stepped forward. "I am Dr. Elena Vasquez of the Galactic Coalition. We received your distress signal. Captain Chen. According to our records, there is no ship called the Prometheus Rising in the human fleet." Captain Chen's eyes widened. "Galactic Coalition? Human fleet?" She leaned forward in her chair. "What year is it? What is the current date according to Earth Standard Time?" Elena told her the date. Captain Chen's face went white. "That is impossible," Chen whispered. "We have only been in dark space for..." She stopped and turned to someone off-screen. "Computer, how long have we been in cryosleep?" A mechanical voice answered. "Cryosleep has been active for 127,439 years, 8 months, 14 days. The bridge of the Seeker fell silent. Elena felt as if someone had hit her in the stomach. Over 127,000 years. That was longer than any known civilization had existed. It was longer than most species had been using tools. "Captain Chen," Elena said carefully, "that would mean your ship is older than recorded galactic history. That would mean humans have been spacefaring for over 150,000 years. Captain Chen rubbed her forehead. "Dr. Vasquez, I think there are some things you do not know about human history. Would it be possible for you to come aboard? There is much we need to discuss, and some of it should not be transmitted over open channels. Elena looked at her crew. Lieutenant Kextall was staring at his instruments in disbelief. Dr. Yanais was running medical scans and shaking her head at the readings. None of them had expected anything like this. Is it safe to board your ship? Elena asked. The Prometheus. Rising has been my home for over a century of active service, Captain Chen replied. She has never failed to protect those aboard her. You will be safe. An hour later, Elena found herself walking through corridors that challenged everything she thought she knew about technology. The walls seemed to be made of a metal that glowed softly with its own light. The artificial gravity was perfect, more stable than anything in the Coalition fleet. The air was clean and fresh, despite the ship being over 100,000 years old. Captain Chen met them in what she called the briefing room. It was larger than the entire bridge of the Seeker. The walls were covered with displays showing star charts, technical readouts, and images that Elena could not immediately identify. Please, sit, Captain Chen said. I know this must be confusing for you. It is confusing for me as well. When we entered cryosleep, Earth was the center of a vast human empire that stretched across half the galaxy. We had colonies on 10,000 worlds. We had technology that could move planets and build artificial stars. Elena felt dizzy. Captain, that is impossible. According to all historical records, humans developed space travel only 3,000 years ago. Before that, they were confined to their homeworld. Captain Chen smiled sadly. Dr. Vasquez, what do your historical records say about the period between 150,000 and 100,000 years ago? Elena thought about it. There are no records from that period. Most species had not yet developed civilization. It is considered the Dark Age before recorded history. And what about humans specifically? What do your records say about human development during that time? Nothing. Human archaeological records only go back about 50,000 years. Before that? Elena stopped. She was beginning to understand. Before that, there is nothing. No cities, no technology, no evidence of advanced civilization. Exactly, Captain Chen said, because 100,000 years ago, humanity left Earth. We had destroyed our homeworld through war and environmental damage. The planet was dying, and we had to choose between staying and dying with it, or leaving and trying to survive among the stars. Captain Chen activated a wall display. It showed an image of Earth, but not the Earth that Elena knew. This Earth was gray and lifeless, its oceans dark and its continents covered in ash. This is what we left behind, Captain Chen continued. A dead world. We took our entire civilization with us, millions of ships carrying billions of people. We spread across the galaxy, building new worlds and new homes. For 50,000 years, humanity was the dominant force in the galaxy. What happened? Elena asked, though she was afraid of the answer. Captain Chen's face grew dark. We found something out here in the dark, something old and hungry and terrible. We called them the Devourers. They consume entire worlds, stripping them of all life and leaving only empty husks behind. They had been sleeping for millions of years, but our expansion woke them up. The display changed to show images that made Elena's blood run cold. Massive creatures that looked like living ships, with hulls that seemed to be made of bone and metal fused together. They moved through space like predators, and everywhere they went, planets died. We fought them for 10,000 years, Captain Chen said. We threw everything we had at them. Weapons that could crack planets, ships that could destroy stars. Nothing worked. They just kept coming, and they were learning from every battle. Finally, we realized that we could not win. We could only run. So you left the galaxy? Most of us did. The Great Evacuation took 100 years. We loaded everything we could into the largest ships we had ever built and fled into dark space, beyond the galactic rim. We left behind a dead galaxy and hoped the Devourers would follow us. Elena was trying to process what she was hearing. But some humans stayed behind? Captain Chen nodded. A few thousand volunteers remained on Earth. They had a plan to rebuild, slowly, carefully, making sure to stay hidden from the Devourers. They would restart human civilization, but do it quietly, without the massive expansion that had attracted the enemy's attention. Those humans, they became the humans who joined the coalition 3,000 years ago? I believe so. It seems their plan worked. They rebuilt human civilization, but kept it small and careful. They never knew about the Great Exodus or the war with the Devourers. To them, they were the first humans to reach the stars. Elena felt as if her entire understanding of the universe had been turned upside down. Humanity was not a young species learning from older, wiser races. They were the galaxy's eldest children, returning home after an exile that had lasted longer than recorded history. "Captain Chen," she said finally, "why are you here now? Why did you come back?" Captain Chen's face became grim. "Because our exile is over, Dr. Vasquez. The Devourers have found us in dark space. Our colonies are falling one by one. The Prometheus Rising is one of the last ships to escape. We came back to warn the galaxy about what is coming." The emergency session of the Coalition High Command took place in the Great Chamber on Centauri Prime. Representatives from 200 worlds sat in curved rows, their various forms creating a rainbow of alien life. At the center of the chamber, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood next to a holographic display showing the massive form of the Prometheus rising. Admiral Zexhai watched from the command platform as Elena presented her findings. Around him, the other senior officials murmured in disbelief and confusion. What she was telling them challenged everything they thought they knew about galactic history. "Distinguished representatives," Elena said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "I present to you Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Prometheus Rising, last survivor of humanity's first galactic civilization." The hologram of Captain Chen appeared next to Elena. Even through the projection, her presence was commanding. She wore her ancient uniform with dignity, and her green eyes surveyed the assembled representatives with the confidence of someone who had commanded fleets among the stars. "Honorable members of the coalition," Captain Chen began, "I bring greetings from the dark between galaxies and a warning that may save all your worlds." Counselor Thex Maran of the Altarian Assembly stood up. He was an elderly being with blue skin and 4 arms, and his voice carried the authority of someone who had helped found the coalition. "Captain Chen, Dr. Vasquez has told us remarkable stories about ancient human civilizations and galaxy-spanning empires. But we have found no evidence of such things in our archaeological records." Captain Chen nodded. "Counselor, when humanity evacuated the galaxy 100,000 years ago, we were very thorough. We could not risk leaving technology behind that the Devourers might use against us. Every human settlement was either destroyed or carefully hidden. We left no trace because we could not afford to leave one." "These Devourers you speak of," interrupted General Corksith of the Coraxian War Council. "Describe them to us. What exactly are we supposed to fear?" The holographic display changed to show the images Captain Chen had shown Elena earlier. The assembled representatives gasped and murmured as they saw the terrible shapes of the Devourer ships. They looked like living things made of bone and metal, with tentacle-like appendages that ended in weapons too terrible to understand. "The Devourers are older than any civilization in this galaxy," Captain Chen explained. "They have been sleeping for millions of years, waiting for life to develop enough to be worth consuming. They feed on the life force of entire worlds, leaving behind empty husks. When they attacked humanity's empire, they consumed over 3,000 worlds in less than 50 years. Counselor Vex Nari of the Centauri hegemony stood up. She was tall and elegant, with silver skin and star-like eyes. Captain Chen, even if we accept your story about ancient humanity, why should we believe that these creatures still exist? You say this happened 100,000 years ago. Surely they are long dead. Captain Chen's expression grew sad. Counselor, 3 months ago, the Devourer fleet found our colony on Kepler 628c. The world had 5 billion human inhabitants. It took them 6 hours to consume every living thing on the planet. 2 weeks after that, they found New Terra, our capital in exile. 12 billion people died in a single day. The chamber fell silent. The numbers were staggering. The entire coalition contained only about 40 billion beings across all member worlds. The idea that something could destroy populations that size in hours was beyond their ability to comprehend. Admiral Zexhai leaned forward. Captain Chen, you say your ship is one of the last to escape. How many other human survivors are there? The Prometheus Rising carries a crew of 50,000 in cryo-sleep. We believe there are perhaps a dozen other ships that managed to escape the final attacks. Maybe 800,000 humans remain from a civilization that once numbered in the hundreds of billions. Dr. Yan Ice, who had accompanied Elena to the session, stood up from the scientific advisory section. Captain Chen, Dr. Vasquez has shown us scans of your ship's technology. Your weapons and defensive systems are far beyond anything in the Coalition fleet. If you could not defeat these devourers, how can we? Captain Chen activated another display. It showed a star map with red markers moving slowly across it. Doctor, the devourers are not just powerful, they learn. Every battle teaches them something new. When we first fought them 100,000 years ago, our weapons were effective. But with each engagement, they adapted. They grew stronger, faster, smarter. By the end of the war, our most advanced weapons barely slowed them down. General Corksith studied the star map. These red markers, are those the Devourer forces? Yes, General. Our long-range sensors detected 17 separate fleets when we escaped dark space. Each fleet contains thousands of ships, and they are all moving toward the Galactic Rim, following the trail we left when we returned. The General's martial bearing remained steady, but Elena could see concern in his eyes. How long before they reach Coalition space? Based on their current speed, the first scouts will reach the outer colonies in approximately 8 months. The main fleets will arrive within 2 years. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Representatives shouted questions and demands. Some called for immediate military preparation. Others suggested attempting to negotiate with the Devourers. A few demanded proof that any of this was real. Admiral Zexhai called for order. Captain Chen, what do you recommend? If these creatures are as powerful as you claim, how do we defend against them? Admiral, based on our experience, direct military confrontation is not possible. The Devourers have had millions of years to perfect the art of war, but there may be other options. Such as? Captain Chen paused, as if considering how much to reveal. The Prometheus Rising carries something the Devourers have never encountered. Technology developed specifically to hide from them. When we evacuated the galaxy, we spent 50 years developing systems that could make entire worlds invisible to their sensors. We called it the Shadow Protocol. Counselor Thex Marin leaned forward. You are suggesting we hide? Abandon our worlds? And flee like cowards? Counselor, with respect, fleeing from an overwhelming enemy is not cowardice, it is wisdom. But I am not suggesting you abandon your worlds. I am suggesting you make them invisible until we can find a better solution. Elena spoke up. Members of the command, Captain Chen has agreed to share this Shadow Protocol technology with the Coalition. But implementing it across 200 worlds will take time. We need to begin immediately. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some representatives were convinced by the evidence and demanded immediate action. Others remained skeptical, arguing that the entire story was an elaborate hoax designed to give humanity a more important role in the Coalition. Still others suggested that even if the threat was real, the coalition should focus on military preparation, rather than hiding technology. Finally, Admiral HFY called for a vote. All those in favor of accepting Captain Chen's offer and beginning immediate implementation of the Shadow Protocol indicate now. The vote was close, but it passed. The coalition would begin preparing to hide their worlds from an enemy that most of them still did not truly believe existed. As the session ended and representatives began filing out, Elena noticed that several of the military leaders remained behind to speak with Captain Chen. Among them was General Corksith, whose species had never lost a war. "Captain Chen," the general said, "I want to understand something. You say your people fought these devourers for 10,000 years before retreating. In all that time, did you never find a way to hurt them? Never discover a weakness?" Pine. Chen was quiet for a moment. "General, we hurt them many times. We destroyed thousands of their ships, probably millions of their creatures. But it never mattered. For every one we killed, 10 more appeared. For every weapon we developed, they created a defense. They are not just an army, General. They are a force of nature, like a hurricane or an earthquake. You do not defeat a hurricane, you survive it. But hurricanes end," General Corksith pointed out. "Even the worst storms eventually pass." "Yes," Captain Chen agreed, "but not before they destroy everything in their path." Later that night, Elena stood on the observation deck of the Coalition Command Station, looking out at the stars. Captain Chen joined her, her ancient uniform looking strange among the modern surroundings. "Do you think they believed you?" Elena asked. "Some of them did. Others will need to see the devourers for themselves before they accept the truth. Unfortunately, by the time that happens, it may be too late." Elena turned to look at the older woman. "Captain, there is something you have not told them, is not there. Something about why you really came back." Captain Chen was quiet for a long time. "Dr. Vasquez, you are very perceptive. Yes, there is something else. The Prometheus Rising is not just here to warn the galaxy about the devourers. We are here because running away did not work. In 100,000 years of exile, we learned something important." "What?" "The devourers are not just following us back to the galaxy, they are driving us back. This is not an invasion, Dr. Vasquez. This is a hunt. And we are the prey they have been, chasing for 100,000 years. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "What does that mean?" Captain Chen looked out at the stars with eyes that had seen the rise, and the attack on Rigel 7 came without warning. The agricultural colony had 8 million inhabitants spread across 3 continents. They had been implementing the Shadow Protocol for 6 months, but the process was not yet complete. When the Devourer scouts found the world, there was nowhere to hide. Admiral HFY watched the final transmission from the colony's capital city in horror. The communication feed showed impossible scenes of destruction. The Devourer ships moved through the atmosphere like living storms, their weapons turning entire cities into gray dust in seconds. But worse than the destruction was what came after. Farad. Transmission showed people, millions of people, standing motionless in the ruins of their homes. They were alive, but their eyes were empty. They moved in perfect unison toward massive collection points where the Devourers waited. The creatures were consuming not just the planet's resources, but the life force of every living thing on it. How long? Admiral HFY asked his communications officer. The attack began 4 hours ago, sir. Complete planetary consumption is estimated in 6 more hours. The Admiral felt sick. 4 hours to destroy a civilization. 6 hours to consume every living thing on an entire world. The Coalition's most powerful weapons would take days to achieve that level of destruction, and they could never drain the life from living beings the way the Devourers did. Sir, reported his tactical officer, we are receiving an urgent transmission from the Prometheus Rising. Captain Chen is requesting immediate permission to engage the enemy. Admiral HFY hesitated. The Coalition fleet was still 3 days yet away from Rigel 7. Even if they departed immediately, they would arrive to find an empty world. But sending a single ship, even one as advanced as the Prometheus Rising, against an entire Devourer fleet seemed like suicide. Tell Captain Chen that engaging the enemy is not authorized. She is to maintain her position and observe only. Sir, Captain Chen says she is not under Coalition command. She says that as the ranking officer of the human fleet, she has authority to protect human colonies, and Rigel 7 has a human population of 1.2 million. The Admiral realized his mistake. Captain Chen had never formally placed herself under Coalition command. Technically, she was still an officer of a human fleet that predated the Coalition by tens of thousands of years. She had every right to act independently. Connect me to Captain Chen directly, he ordered. The view screen showed the bridge of the Prometheus Rising. It was a scene of controlled activity as crew members prepared for battle. Captain Chen stood at the center, wearing a combat uniform that looked both ancient and impossibly advanced. Admiral HFY, she said without preamble, I am taking the Prometheus Rising to Rigel 7. We will arrive in 14 hours. Captain, that is suicide. Our intelligence reports indicate at least 50 Devourer ships in that system. Your ship, no matter how advanced, cannot fight those odds. Captain Chen's expression was hard. Admiral, with respect, your intelligence is wrong. I am detecting exactly 47 Devourer vessels, including 3 heavy feeders and 1 scout carrier. These are not impossible odds. Admiral HFY stared at her. Captain, you are talking about fighting nearly 50 enemy ships with a single vessel. Admiral, the Prometheus Rising is not just a single vessel. She is a supercarrier. When fully operational, she carries a complement of 20,000 combat craft and a crew of 50,000. More importantly, she was built specifically to fight Devourers. The Admiral felt a chill. He had thought of the massive human ship as an ancient relic, impressive but obsolete, but Captain Chen was talking about it as if it were still a formidable weapon of war. Captain Chen, even if your ship is as powerful as you claim, the crew has been in cryosleep for over 100,000 years. Surely they need time to recover and train? Captain Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Admiral, you are thinking like someone who has never fought a war for survival. When the Devourers attack, you do not have time to recover and train. You wake up fighting, or you do not wake up at all. The transmission ended. Admiral HFY watched on his tactical display as the massive human ship began moving toward Rigel 7 at a speed that his instruments could barely track. Whatever technology powered the Prometheus Rising, it was far beyond anything in the Coalition fleet. 14 hours later, the Prometheus Rising dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Rigel system. Captain Chen stood on her bridge, now surrounded by crew members who had been awakened from their century-long sleep. They moved with the precision of soldiers who had spent decades fighting the same enemy. Status report, she ordered. Commander Martinez, her tactical officer, looked up from his console. 47 Devourer vessels confirmed, Captain. They are in standard feeding formation around Rigel 7. Planetary consumption is approximately 70% complete. Captain Chen felt a familiar anger burning in her chest. She had seen too many worlds die this way. Are there any survivors? Sensors detect approximately 800,000 life signs remaining. They are being held in collection areas for processing. Understood. Weapon status? All primary systems online, Captain. The Shadow Forge is operational and ready to begin production. We have sufficient raw materials for sustained combat operations. Captain Chen nodded. The Shadow Forge was one of humanity's greatest achievements, a manufacturing system that could produce weapons, ammunition, and even small spacecraft during battle. It had allowed human fleets to fight for years without returning to base. Begin. Combat production. I want a full fighter screen deployed within 30 minutes. Load all torpedo tubes with quantum warheads. "Captain," interrupted her communications officer, "we are receiving a transmission from the Devourer fleet. They are demanding our surrender." On screen. The view screen showed something that looked like a nightmare given form. The Devourer commander was a creature of bone and metal, with appendages that moved independently and eyes that glowed with an alien intelligence. When it spoke, its voice was like the sound of tearing metal. "Human vessel," it said, "you have returned to us. We have waited long for this moment. Surrender now, and your consumption will be quick." Captain Chen stepped forward. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Prometheus Rising. You are ordered to release the prisoners on Rigel 7 and withdraw from this system immediately." The creature that might have been laughing. "You are the same species that fled from us so long ago. You cannot fight us now any more than you could then." "You are about to learn how much we have improved since then," Captain Chen replied. "This is your final warning." The transmission ended. Captain Chen turned to her crew. "All stations, prepare for combat. Remember, we are not just fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for every world the Devourers will attack if we fail here." The battle began when the Prometheus Rising launched its first wave of fighters. But these were not the simple craft that the Coalition used. They were sleek vessels that moved through space like living things, their weapons charging energy from the ship's main reactor through quantum links. The Devourers responded with their own attack craft, creatures that were part machine and part biology, with weapons that could drain the life from their targets. But as the two forces clashed, something unexpected happened. The human fighters were winning. Admiral Zexhai watched the battle from his flagship, still 2 days away from the system. His tactical displays showed an impossible scene. A single human ship was fighting nearly 50 Devourer vessels and holding its own. More than holding its own, it was winning. "How is this possible?" he asked his tactical officer. "Sir, the human ship appears to be using weapons we have never seen before. Their energy signatures are completely unknown, and they are producing new fighters even as the battle continues." On the Prometheus Rising, Captain Chen watched as her weapons found their marks. The quantum torpedoes were tearing through Devourer hulls like paper. But more importantly, they were doing something the Devourers had never experienced before. They were causing permanent damage. "Captain," reported Commander Martinez, "enemy vessel designation Alpha 7 has been destroyed. Confirmed kill." Captain Chen allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. It had been 100,000 years since humanity had destroyed a Devourer ship. The weapons they had developed during their long exile were finally proving their worth, but the battle was far from over. The Devourers were adapting, just as they always did. Their remaining ships were changing formation, their weapons adjusting. To counter the human tactics, "All fighters, return to base," Captain Chen ordered. "Prepare for Phase 2. The Prometheus Rising began to change. Its hull opened in dozens of places, revealing weapon systems that had been hidden beneath its armor. Energy began building along its length, as systems that had been dormant for millennia came to life. "What is she doing?" Admiral Zexhai whispered, as he watched the massive ship transform. Captain Chen stood at the center of her bridge as power coursed through her ship. "All stations, prepare to engage the Stellar Lance system. Target the Devourer heavy feeders." The weapon that fired from the Prometheus Rising was like nothing any Coalition officer had ever seen. It was a beam of pure energy that reached across space like the finger of an angry god. When it struck the first Devourer heavy feeder, the massive creature simply ceased to exist. The Resurrection Protocol signal reached across the galaxy like a wake-up call that had been delayed for 100,000 years. In the asteroid fields around dead stars, massive shapes began to stir. In the deep clouds of gas giants, ancient engines came to life. Hidden in the folds of space itself, humanity's lost fleet began its awakening. Admiral HFY stood on the bridge of his flagship as reports flooded in from coalition monitoring stations across the galaxy. Each report was more impossible than the last. "Sir, Station Omega 15 reports a massive gravitational anomaly near the Vega system. Something approximately 40 kilometers long just appeared on their sensors. Station Beta 7 confirms emergence of an unknown vessel in the Arcturus sector. Hull configuration appears to be human, but the size readings must be in error. Deep Space Monitor Gamma 12 has detected multiple vessels emerging from what appears to be a previously unknown spatial fold near the galactic core." Admiral HFY felt a mixture of awe and terror. In less than 6 hours, over 30 massive ships had appeared throughout Coalition space. All of them were human. All of them were impossibly old and impossibly advanced. "Get me Captain Chen," he ordered. The view screen showed the bridge of the Prometheus Rising, now floating in orbit around Rigel 7. The planet below was healing. Somehow the human ship had not only driven off the Devourers, but had actually reversed much of the damage. They had done. 8 million people who should have been dead were walking around in a daze, trying to understand how they had been saved. "Admiral HFY," Captain Chen said. She looked tired but satisfied. "I trust you have been monitoring the fleet awakening." "Captain Chen, what exactly is happening? Our sensors are detecting human ships throughout the galaxy. Some of them are larger than space stations." "Those are not just ships, Admiral. They are arcs. When humanity evacuated the galaxy, we left behind more than just empty worlds. We left a sleeping fleet, hidden and waiting for the day we might return." Admiral HFY studied the tactical displays showing the positions of the awakened human vessels. They were spread across Coalition space in a pattern that suggested careful planning rather than random placement. "How many ships are we talking about, Captain?" "The final count will be approximately 200 vessels, ranging from heavy cruisers to world ships. Each one carries a crew of between 10,000 and 100,000 humans in cryosleep. When fully awakened, the human fleet will number approximately 8 million personnel." The Admiral felt his legs grow weak. 8 million humans with technology 100,000 years more advanced than anything in the Coalition fleet. If they chose, too, they could conquer the entire galaxy in a matter of months. "Captain Chen, I must ask directly. What are your intentions? The Coalition needs to know if humanity intends to reclaim its former territories." Captain Chen was quiet for a moment. "Admiral, humanity left this galaxy as refugees fleeing from an enemy we could not defeat. We return as survivors of a 100,000-year war. Our intentions are simple. We want our people to have a home among the stars. But we also understand that this galaxy is no longer empty. It has been filled with new civilizations, new species, new hopes and dreams. Then you do not intend to displace the current inhabitants. Admiral, we have learned much during our exile. We have learned that survival is more important than territory, that cooperation is stronger than conquest. We propose a new relationship. Humanity will take its place as a member of the galactic community, but we will also serve as its guardians against threats from beyond." Before Admiral HFY could respond, alarms began sounding throughout his ship. His tactical officer looked up with terror in his eyes. "Sir, massive gravitational distortions detected at the galactic rim. Multiple contacts moving at incredible speed toward the core systems." "The Devourers?" Captain Chen asked. "Confirmed. Main fleet strength estimated at over 3,000 vessels. They will reach the outer colonies in 18 hours. Captain Chen turned to her crew. "Signal all awakened human vessels. Execute battle formation Omega. We will make our stand at the Centauri defense line." "Captain," Admiral HFY said, "the Centauri system is the heart of Coalition space. If the battle is fought there and you lose—" "Admiral, if we lose this battle, it will not matter where we fight it. The galaxy will fall either way. But if we win, we want the Coalition to see exactly who they are allying themselves with." 12 hours later, the combined human fleet gathered in the space between the outer colonies and the Centauri system. Admiral HFY had brought every coalition ship he could muster, nearly 800 vessels representing the combined might of 200 worlds. But as his fleet took position alongside the human ships, he realized how insignificant his forces truly were. The human ships were magnificent. The smallest of them dwarfed coalition dreadnoughts. The largest, massive world ships called New Terra, Stellar Guardian, and Terra's Vengeance were like mobile cities, their hulls gleaming with weapons that could crack planets. "Admiral," reported his tactical officer, "the human ships are sharing targeting data with our fleet. They are integrating our vessels into their battle formation." Admiral HFY watched as his ships were assigned positions within the human formation. Rather than treating the coalition fleet as junior partners, the humans were incorporating them as equals. Each coalition vessel was paired with a human ship, their systems linked for maximum effectiveness. Captain Chen appeared on his view screen. "Admiral, the Devourer main fleet will arrive in 6 hours. This will be unlike anything your people have ever experienced. The enemy will try to break your will as much as your ships. Remember that humanity fought these creatures for 10,000 years. We know their tactics, their weaknesses, their fears." "Their fears?" Admiral HFY asked. "You suggest that the Devourers can feel fear?" Captain Chen smiled grimly. "Admiral? Why? Do you think they followed us across the dark between galaxies? It was not hunger that drove them to chase us for 100,000 years. It was fear. Fear that humanity would find a way to destroy them. And have you found a way to destroy them? We are about to find out." The Devourer fleet emerged from faster than light, travel like a swarm of living nightmares. There were thousands of them, their biomechanical hulls writhing with weapons that defied understanding. They moved in perfect coordination, as if guided by a single malevolent intelligence. But as they approached the human defensive line, something unexpected happened. The lead Devourer ships slowed, then stopped completely. "They are scanning our fleet," reported Captain Chen. "I believe they recognize the human ships." "Are they afraid?" Admiral HFY asked. "No," Captain Chen replied. "They are analyzing us, trying to determine if we are the same humans they chased into exile. When they realize that we are, they will attack with everything they have." The attack, when it came, was unlike anything Admiral HFY had ever imagined. The Devourers launched waves of living projectiles, creatures that flew through space under their own power, seeking to attach themselves to enemy ships and drain them of life. Behind them came energy weapons that could turn matter into energy, and energy into nothingness. But humanity was ready. The human ships opened fire with weapons that had been perfected during 100,000 years of war. Quantum torpedoes that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Energy beams that followed their targets through space and time. Most terrifying of all, weapons that could turn the Devourer's own life-draining abilities against them. "Incredible," whispered Admiral HFY's tactical officer. "The human weapons are not just destroying the Devourer ships, they are consuming them." The battle raged for hours. Coalition ships fought alongside their human partners, learning tactics that had been developed across centuries of warfare. They saw weapons that could destroy entire squadrons with a single shot, defenses that could turn enemy attacks back on their creators. But the Devourers were adapting, as they always did. Their ships began changing form, their weapons adjusting. To counter human tactics, for every advantage humanity gained, the enemy found a counter. "Captain Chen," Admiral HFY called, "they are learning too quickly. Even with your advanced weapons, this battle could go either way." Captain Chen nodded grimly. "Admiral, it is time for the final gambit. All human ships, prepare to execute the Endgame Protocol." "What is the Endgame Protocol?" Admiral HFY asked. "Something we hoped we would never have to use," Captain Chen replied. "Admiral, I need you to pull all coalition ships back to minimum safe distance. What we are about to do will affect everything within a light hour of this position." "Admiral." HFY gave the order and coalition ships began retreating. As they pulled back, He watched the human fleet reform into a perfect sphere, with the largest ships at the center and the smallest forming a protective shell around them. "All human vessels, link quantum cores," Captain Chen ordered. "Prepare to channel the full power of the fleet through the Prometheus Rising." Admiral Zexhai watched in awe as energy began flowing between the human ships. Lines of pure power connected vessel to vessel, creating a web of energy that grew brighter and brighter. At the center of the web, the Prometheus Rising began to glow like a small star. "Captain Chen, what are you doing?" "Admiral, 100,000 years ago, humanity developed a weapon so powerful that we were afraid to use it. We called it the Stellar Lance, a device that